Okay, we are back in this thing.
Hmm.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Silver Lining TV, where we motivate and inspire people to create a better life through real estate. And we're back again, and as you can see, it's a familiar face, Lauren. Lauren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are
Good.
you?
I'm great today. And we felt it was the perfect time, especially with the change in the market, that we really break down why an inspection is important.
Hmm.
So now you probably have talked to someone, or maybe you yourself have recently bought a home, and there has been actually there's a percentage, I believe 30% of people over the past year have waived their
Hmm.
inspection, right? So you may know somebody who has done it, or maybe you have, but we want to break down why, if you are getting into the market, you must always get an inspection, because an inspection is going to break down the condition of the property
Yep.
and why that cost is worth it. So I'm gonna share my screen, and then Lauren, I'm gonna throw it to you and have you kind of break everything down from your perspective.
Yeah. So, not going off this infographic yet, but having a home inspection is so important.
Hmm.
So, I've heard the horror stories from the past few months when it's been a little bit difficult. Like, you have to go see a house same day and you're waiving inspection, doing appraisal gap, to where now you don't really have to do that.
Hmm.
But, people who probably needed an inspection waived it and now they're regretting it. So, the $300 to $600 to make sure that everything is structurally and everything's good in the house, it's definitely worth getting. So,
Hmm.
um, so to throw it to the infographic, why a home inspection is important. If you're buying a home, here's what you should know. So, what does an inspection do? So, inspectors look for HVAC and heating system problems, plumbing, electrical, seeing if there's knob and tube, stuff like that. Or even like, hey, this tile's chipped, might want to replace it.
Hmm.
Structural, like foundation, exterior rot or decay, and roof condition. So that's also a big one, because you don't want to move into a house and have to immediately fix the roof, because that's a $20,000, $30,000 fix.
Yeah, it can be for sure.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to add to that is, when you get an inspection, we always recommend getting one. And if there are any additional inspections you need to get done, like septic,
Mm-hmm.
well, water, anything like that, we recommend doing so. But I want you to keep in mind, the inspector can only inspect what he or she can see.
Right. They can't tear open the wall and see inside. They have to do based off of surface.
Exactly. So you got to keep that in mind, that not every single thing will be seen
Mm-hmm.
within a 2 hour to 4 hour window.
Yeah.
Now, it again, the more information that we have, the more awareness that we have about a property that we're purchasing, the better decisions that we can make. So it's still worth it,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean they're going to catch or find everything. As a matter of fact, a lot of times things that go bad in a property happens after the inspection. It
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
even an issue at the time of the actual inspection. An inspection is just a snapshot in time,
Mm-hmm.
a snapshot of the current condition of the property,
Right.
not what the condition of the property will be a month, a year, 2, 5 years from now. Okay.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind as you're going through the inspection process, or you're preparing to. Um, Knob and tube. That has been one that we've seen a couple times this year, where get up in the attic and you realize it's knob and tube. They will normally get in the attic. However, they won't get in the attic if they cannot access
Right.
the attic. Okay. With that being said, you're going to be the buyer. You may even be a seller. If you're a seller watching this and you're having an inspection done on your property, make sure you have the access available for the inspector the day of the
Mm-hmm.
inspection.
Yeah.
Conversely, if you're the buyer, you want to make sure the same thing. Check with the other agent, with your current agent, so they can check with the other agent to make sure that there is access to the attic.
Yeah.
There's a lot that can be found up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add? Because you've kind of experienced some knob and
I
tube
have.
situations.
Um, So knob and tube, it can be an issue. But for most houses that have had people living in them, current people living in them, it's not an active issue. And sometimes it's just up in the attic. So
Yep.
maybe sometimes it's going to a light bulb up there. Or maybe it is throughout the whole house. But it would take all of the wiring to be gutted from the house to put new wiring in. So not everybody has that type of money to do that initially. But to be aware that, hey, it's not a big deal, but it also comes into effect of it may be a long term, but for short term, it's okay.
Yeah, and I would add too, some people living in their property for so long don't even know or realize that they have knob and tube wiring, which is more of a reason to get an inspection. Okay, so you can find that out. And like she did mention, yeah, if you did buy let's say you're purchasing a property that does have knob and tube, and it's not going to be super cheap to get that updated or upgraded, right? I would rather know if I'm a buyer that what I'm dealing with.
Right.
I would rather know that so then I can make a decision. Is this something that I can, number one, negotiate? Because this should be up to your agent to help you decide on whether, hey, we can negotiate this in so it is taken care of, or you can get a credit, something to where you're going to be safe and feel comfortable moving forward with the purchase. That's number one. The number two is, if it doesn't make sense, that throws you off and you just don't want the house. Now you have the I guess the certainty in your decision. You're not having to guess.
Right.
And that can go to anything. We're just talking about knob and tube, but that can be for anything with the property.
Right. Yeah. I will say knob and tube you have to have special insurance for, or some insurance companies won't allow you to have knob and tube. So be careful of that as well. But that comes when you shop for insurance as well. So it's really a long-term thing of, do you love the house, but it may need new electrical? Well, that could come 5 years from now. So
yeah, speaking of that, roof. I got to touch on roof because I have witnessed literally my own personal home. When I bought, not the current home I live in, but there was a previous home that I owned. The roof was no older than 5 to 7 years, and we had a leak. During the time of the inspection, it was the shingles, everything was nice and tight, great condition, no issues. Year 3 of owning the home, which would have been maybe the roof at that point was probably close to 10 years old, 8 to 10 years old at that point. We had a leak, and it was a bad leak, and we had to replace the whole roof. Things can happen like that. At the time of the inspection, it may be in great condition. A roof can go bad, a new one can go bad within 5 years.
yeah.
You got to keep in mind the exterior factors, the snows we get, wind, things like that. So there could be times where you have an issue with the roof, it checked out fine during the inspection, and you're wondering why didn't the inspector catch it? Well, at the time of the inspection, that wasn't an issue, right?
As I'd say, my brother had that same problem. He bought his house in 2019, and his house is on a sump pump, and the drain would lead out from the driveway. And so if it rained, even still to this day, but what had happened was it wasn't working, and it flooded the whole, like, it didn't flood, like fill up, but it did have a thick layer of water on the floor for a while. It could
do a lot of damage.
So it was fine at inspection. But then we moved in, and a couple months went by, and we had heavy rain, and so still to this day, if it rains, it gets a little damp down there. But
and again, we're not saying this will happen to you. We're just giving you anecdotal experiences that we've noticed throughout, the times of helping people, that the inspection is a snapshot of the current condition, snapshot of the condition of the property at that time. Another thing too is there could be times, because I think we want to say an inspector is a um, qualified electrician or a qualified roofer or a structural engineer. They're not. Okay. They are not that. Now, there
Mhm.
should be an opportunity if there is, like during the inspection, the inspector will see maybe a bow in a wall and they'll say, well, we recommend, or I recommend inspector.
Mhm.
Um, the inspector will recommend, excuse me, for you to get further evaluation done by a structural engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, so there should be an opportunity for further evaluation, but keep in mind the inspector is not an engineer.
Right.
An inspector is not an electrician. Okay, that's one thing that I do find gets confusing is like the inspector doesn't go to school to become none of those things. They have a general knowledge
Right.
of all that stuff.
I would say I love our inspector that we work with most of the time because he'll have everything red, yellow, and green.
Hmm.
And yellow's maintenance, so maintenance items, and then it'll always say as well, inspector recommends this, this, this. And it's like, okay.
Yep.
So you got good ones out there, and I love what ours does, and he's great.
Yep. And we work with all inspectors. The one she's referring to is the one we work with the most. But just keep in mind, not all inspectors are created equal. So just
Mhm.
make sure you do your due diligence. If you have somebody in mind, you really want to make sure that they're legit. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, they should have their license and be legit. But what I mean by legit is like how many people are they helping? What is their reviews? I mean, if we haven't worked with them before, then I don't know, maybe.
We're kind of looking into them like the FBI. We're like, okay.
Yeah, because that can really determine a lot in the transaction and over the lifetime of you living in the home,
Mhm.
right? Because a lot of things that we do find can be negotiated to be taken care of. So,
Right.
I let's see, is there anything else that we want to touch on? I mean, I would say even after buying the home, you should get a yearly inspection on your property.
Mhm.
I think that is important to get refamiliar with your home. I for the longest I had a crack in my window and I had a nice vehicle too. I had a crack in my window and because I drove and this is my vehicle. Because I drove my vehicle every single day, that crack just kind of became part of my car.
Mhm.
So I stopped paying attention to it. We do the same thing with the homes we live in.
Right.
There may be like some crack in the wall or some stain in the ceiling, and we just kind of like it's just a part of the decoration now, right?
Right.
We should get inspections yearly to just make sure there's no issues because a lot of things will happen after you own the home and you're living in it.
Right.
Stay ahead of the problems,
Right.
right? Stay ahead of the potential problems. But other than that, I don't really have anything else to add.
Mhm.
Get your inspection. Kind of like take your vitamins and brush your teeth every morning.
Get your inspection.
Get your inspection.
And if your agent tells you not to, ask them why.
Yeah, I speaking of that, I think oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Why it matters. According to NAR, roughly 30% of buyers are waiving their inspection. Okay. 30%. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me
Right.
due to the market that we were in. But yeah, I would ask if the strategy to help you get the home under contract is to waive your inspection, highly consider not doing that.
Yeah. Ask them exactly why it would make your offer stronger and what other areas can you make your offer stronger rather than getting rid of something that is almost detrimental.
Yeah.
So ask why and ask them to explain why.
Hmm. And there are strategies to still make your offer stronger and
Mhm.
still get an inspection, but be in that there's something to where, and I'm not going to talk about it on because that's not the purpose of this call, but there are different strategies to still be able to get what it is you want in and which is getting an inspection,
Mhm.
while also the seller not having to worry about repairs or anything like that.
Right.
So it's a win-win. But yeah, it's a crucial step in the home buying process. So if you have any other questions about how all this works, what type of inspections are possible, what inspectors we use, all that stuff. And if you wanted to reach out to Lauren to ask those questions, Lauren, let the people know how can they reach out to you.
Well, you can reach out to me on Facebook at Lauren Whitaker, or you can text or call me at 765-204-2690, or you can just email me. It's lauren@slreg.com. Pretty easy.
There we go. And she's the easiest way is probably going to be phone and Facebook. Okay, because those are pretty much connected. Yeah, and obviously if you need me, you know where to reach me. I'm on Facebook a lot, so I'm posting all the time information.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna wrap this. We're gonna put a bow on this one. I know this was valuable. Again, if you want any other information, reach out to Lauren. And then if you want this infographic, reach out to Lauren. Anything that we can do to continue to serve the community, that is our commitment. So that means we'll be on next week, and who knows, and maybe Lauren again.
It'll
Who
probably
knows? So, all right, you guys. Well, we're gonna let you guys go. And then, like I always do, our goal is to help you reach yours. And until next time, take care.